Hello, in this video we're going to take a look at getting input from the user. So we're going to take an important step and actually make our program interactive. So to do that I'm going to use a class called Scanner. So at the moment you still don't really know what a class is, but we do have at least one, well we have a couple of examples of classes here. We've got app, and that's a class that we're creating ourselves. We've said here public class app, we've created an app. And we've also got a system here, and we can recognize these because they have uppercase first letters. These are actually classes, and you'll find out what a class is later on. We're going to use another class in this video called Scanner. So I'm going to write something that's going to look quite cryptic, but if you type it out a few times, you'll get used to using it, and you'll gradually come to understand it as you go through the course, as with many other things. So after the opening curly bracket of this main method, I'm going to put a couple of blank lines, and I'm going to write scanner with an uppercase S, scanner with a lowercase s, equals new scanner, two round brackets and a semicolon. It's the capitalization is very important here. You have to get it right. And between these two round brackets, I'm going to type system, capital S, dot in. And we've still got an error at the moment. Now that's because I'm using this scanner class, which is part of Java. It's part of the JDK, Java Development Kit. But it's in a package, and my program doesn't know how to find this package. So to tell it where to find scanner, I'm going to use a shortcut key. So on the Mac, I'm going to do Command-Shift-O, or on the Windows, Control-Shift-O. I hold down, if I was on Windows, I'd hold down Control and press Shift. On Mac, Command and Shift, and then press O, the letter O. O stands for Organize Imports, and it brings up this dialog box. And I'm going to select this java.util.scanner and click Finish. And what that does is, all it does is it adds this line at the top of my program. After the package statement, it adds import java.util.scanner. And that's saying, when we say scanner in the program, we mean this scanner, and we're going to use this scanner, and it's in the java.util package. So this, what a package is and a class will become clearer to you in time. For the moment, I'm just kind of trying to get used to the terminology. Let's take a closer look at this line. Looks a bit cryptic. Scanner here is a class, and we can recognize it because it has an uppercase first letter, an S. So let me give you a little question here. We're already working with two other classes in this one program, and maybe try to pause the video if you feel like it and see if you can figure out where those two other classes are that we're using on the basis of what I've just said. Okay, so now maybe you found them, or maybe you don't want to pause the video, but I'm going to tell you. So we're defining a class of our own here called app, and that's got a uppercase first letter. And we're also using the system class here. And we're using the system class here. It's the same class. So there's two that I can see already here. This here is a variable. It's a variable of type scanner. Now, I've also called it scanner. I've given it the same name as the scanner class, but with a lowercase first letter. Some people don't like to do that. They may even argue that this is bad practice, to give a variable the same name as its type. So both are called scanner in this case. I'm a fan of it. I think it makes it clearer what this actually is, and I don't mind that they only differ by capitalization. But if you want, you can call it something different, like, you know, scan input, or some people even call it input. But I find that a bit confusing here because it's not actually input, it's a thing that's used for getting input. And what we do then is we want to set it to a new, we call this an object, but we're setting it to a new instance of scanner. So a class is kind of like a template, and an object is like a particular object made from that template. So we're creating a new scanner object here, and that will become clearer also later on. Don't worry about it now, but it's as if scanner is a blueprint or a recipe for making something, maybe more like a blueprint. And here we're actually creating a particular instance of that thing. Like if we had plans for making a car here in the form of a class, and we have a particular car, we create a particular actual car by doing new here. And then we're saying that scanner is going to scan the system input, system.in, and that's going to be input from the console. Okay, let's actually make this work. So what we have to do is, I'm going to say, underneath this, I'm going to say, let's maybe have another blank line and write sysout, enter value in Fahrenheit to convert. And let's put like one of these characters, a sort of angle bracket pointing to the right to make it a bit more like a prompt. Maybe I'll have a space there as well, and I'll also change this from print line to just print. So hopefully the user can type directly after this space. We'll see how this works. So if I run this now, it simply outputs some text. And in fact, the result is on the same line, so it even looks a bit ugly. But after this, immediately after the system.out.print, I'm going to write, let's change this double Fahrenheit. So I'll move it up slightly. And instead of saying equals 91, I'll say equals scanner.next float. And as soon as I see the right thing selected in this autocomplete, I think I press Control Space sort of instinctively. So you type a few characters, press Control Space, and this thing comes up. S gets rid of it. So what I want is next float, hit return, and semicolon. Let's try that. So I'm going to run it. And in the console it says enter value in Fahrenheit to convert. I'm going to convert 97, very hot. Hit return, and we get 97.0 degrees Fahrenheit is 36.1 degrees Celsius. What happens if you enter something that isn't a floating point value? Let's run it. Well, it's fine with integers. If I write 54 or something, it works. It can easily convert an int to a float, just treat it like a float. But supposing we run it and I enter something that's not even a number, like some random text, we get an error. And in the next video, we're going to look a little bit at that error. So for now, try this out for yourself. And if you're feeling creative, even better, make up your own program. For example, make up a program to convert miles to kilometers, something like that. You can find a formula for it here. To convert miles to kilometers, you just multiply the number of miles by 1.609. So you could write a program that asks the user for a number of miles and converts it to a number of kilometers. And it will work very much like this. Maybe have a go at that and type this out for yourself, I would suggest first, or just launch into trying to create a program very similar to this one that converts something to something else, but also gets input from the user. Okay, I'll leave it there for this video. Until next time, happy coding. Hello, in this video we're just going to take a little bit of a look at the error message that we produced in the last video. So hopefully by now you've at the very least typed out this code yourself, and I would strongly suggest at the very least experimenting with this, see what you can change, to make it do something slightly different, see if it works as you expect. And ideally you've written some program that gets user input and converts one number in one unit of measurement to some other number in some other unit of measurement. Or you've invented some exercise for yourself that's similar. Hopefully you've had a go at that, maybe converting miles to kilometers, And you shouldn't really encounter any great problems with that. Miles to kilometers would be basically the same program as far as I can see, except that we don't need to subtract anything. We'd just be multiplying it by something. I think it was 1.609. Okay, so I just want to show you this thing that's appeared in the console. If I run this and I enter something that isn't a number, hit return, then we get this error trace. This is actually called a stack trace. And the stack is basically how Java keeps track of one method calling another method. In other words, one method runs and it uses other methods, so other subroutines, and they sort of all make each other execute in a kind of a tree type thing, really. But let's not worry about that for the moment, because we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves, really. I just want to begin to familiarize you with this, because you're going to see a lot of these, and it looks very intimidating to start with. When you get errors in Java, they can look quite disturbing. So one thing to say is, regarding this program, I don't think there's not really any way we can fix it at the moment using what we already know at this point, so that it can handle input that's not a number in a way that's more elegant. We totally can fix that, just not with what we know so far as I can see, or not easily. So we're not going to worry about it for the moment. We'll look at it later on, how we would fix this sort of thing. But when you see an error message like this, very often the first and the last lines are the most important. So if we look at the top, it tells us what the basic problem is. The problem is we've got a Java util input mismatch exception. Now this input mismatch exception is actually a class. And what we have here is, this is showing you that we say that an exception has been thrown, and we'll be looking at that later on. But you could guess from the name of it, input mismatch exception, that there's some sort of mismatch with the input that we've entered, which is of course the case. We entered letters when it was expecting a floating point number. The last line in this case actually gives us the error. It gives us the line and the file where the error occurred. So with really big stack traces, something that you can end up doing is sort of looking down them for the first line that it mentions that's actually in your own code that you've actually written. You know, so you end up starting from the top and you're looking down it and you're looking at files that you haven't written yourself, and eventually you come to one that you have written yourself, and that's where you can start investigating the error. In this case, there's only one line referring to our own code, and it's right at the bottom, and it's here at .java, line 13. So if I click on that, it will actually take me to the line. There we go, it's highlighted it, and that is where the error occurred. So we did scanner.next float, and that was expecting the user to input a float, but the user, me in this case, inputted some letters, so it threw a wobbly. It threw an exception, in fact, technically speaking. Wobbly is not a technical term. Okay, we've also got a warning here in this program, and if we click on it, it says resource leak, scanner is never closed. Now that's not a big problem, but we shouldn't leave warnings in our programs. What it means is, all it wants me to do is what I'm about to show you, which is this. Let's create a new line in our program. In fact, I can do this immediately after I've used the scanner, since I'm not going to use it again for anything. By this point in the program, line 14 here, I've just created a new blank line, of course, but I'm not using the scanner anymore. So I can write scanner.close. And then the warning goes away, and that makes it happy. So what scanner.close does precisely, I'm not completely sure, but I don't think it's important. It's not that important, but it will make the warning go away. So I advise you to do it. Closing things that we've opened in general is very important in programming. In this particular case, perhaps not so important, but in general, it's a good thing to do. And what we're closing, I suppose, is where we've got something that's scanning user input, trying to get user input and scanning it and trying to find out what's in it. That's what scanner does. In this case, it's scanning system.in, trying to get stuff from system.in, and it's trying to turn it, it's looking for a number in that user input, basically, and it didn't find one. And by closing it, I suppose we're closing, I guess, system.in, I'm not really sure, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so we know where the error is. We can't fix it at the moment. We know that if you enter letters instead of a number, it throws an exception. And we're going to be looking at exceptions later on. But for now, we'll just leave it as it is. Let's try it again now and check that it works. There we go, still working. Okay, so until next time, happy coding. Hello. We're going to finish this section by, I'm just going to show you some Eclipse tips and tricks, a few things you can do with Eclipse. So hopefully you've created that last program, you've got it all working, you put in the scanner.close, and or maybe you've created a similar program of your own. There are lots of other things that we can do with strings, and we're going to be seeing more of them in the course, but rather than overload you with a massive list of everything you can possibly do with a string, I'm going to introduce them more, try to introduce them more sort of organically as we go through the course. And what I'm going to show you in this video is just a few Eclipse tips and tricks. So one thing you can do in Eclipse is, I'm using the dark theme here, which in this version of Eclipse seemed to be the default, and I sort of decided just to go with it. But the default used to be the light theme, but you can switch between them and select which one you prefer. So if you go to Eclipse Preferences, so maybe that menu is different on Windows, I'm not completely sure, it might be in File or something. On the Mac I get a particular menu called Eclipse, but regardless, however you usually go to the preferences in programs in your operating system, go to that. You should be able to find these sort of Eclipse preferences somewhere. And in this dialog, if I type theme and just click appearance here, so I've got theming enabled and the dark theme is selected. If I want, I can select the light theme, and I'm going to click apply and close. Whoa. And then I'm going to restart Eclipse, because otherwise the change from one theme to another might not exactly be complete. So I'm going to restart it. So there are a few built-in themes, and you can find many more on the internet. So that's completely up to you. You can get Eclipse to look sort of more how you want it to look. Here we go. So it's very light now. I'll use this for the rest of this video, although it's hurting my eyes, because